Good morning, Inspiring Illuminators. To be honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to publish this as a Jaunt with Jen or not. I was walking around doing my Pokemoning like I do most day mornings. I like to take a longer walk on the weekends and really listen to a different kind of, not necessarily podcast. I kind of use my YouTube as a podcast. I have YouTube Premium, so I just kind of leave it running in the background while I pull up my Pokemon and take a walk and just enjoy nature. And I came across one, let me see if I can find it. It's by Donald Hoffman, and it was posted by The Big Think, Truth versus Reality, How We Evolved to Survive, Not to See What's Really There. And it was posted on September 17, 2019. And if I can, I'll post the link in this video below if I decide to publish it. Donald Hoffman is a professor of cognitive science at the University of California in Irvine. And basically, in the video, he was talking about this experiment that he ran, thousands of times. You'll have to watch the video for his description of it. And now there are some things that we learn with scripture, with observing the objective world. There's this very narrow band. I was talking with a friend. I think this person heard it coined as like the Goldilocks Ratio of like the very narrow band of what can cause an atmosphere that is similar to the one we have on Earth. And, ancient scriptures talk about the spiritual path as a very narrow path. And I myself have observed, just watching the world, that really the amount of light in the world, the amount of physical things in the world is very, very narrow. Now, what was fascinating about this talk is that in this experiment that Donald did, they ran, again, you would probably have to watch the video. I'm more of like take all the information and summarize and boil it down into one big idea. That's kind of who I am and what I do. And basically, what he said, which is quite fascinating. See, everything that I listen to, I apply to human behavior in my own experience. I think we all do, if not human behavior, at least our own experience. And basically what he said, and we kind of know this, is that there are two different kinds of energy systems, right? I've talked about this before, how we live in the juxtaposition. There's the push, there's the pull. There's the physical, the non-physical. Now what he found is, and I like this, and it makes sense, and maybe I'm thinking about this more because I've been diagnosed with cancer a third time, or I shouldn't say diagnosed, you only get diagnosed once. But the cancer has recurred a third time. And what I'm finding absolutely fascinating, and kind of like Donald was saying in his video, and it's often a question that I hear from other people. How come the people who are quote unquote turned good have bad things happen to them? And this could be another explanation for that I find absolutely fascinating. We also know that within these two powers, there's competition and there's cooperation. So what he found in his experiment was that those who knew the truth, who could see beyond the veil, if you will, which again would make sense in a lot of ancient scriptures as well. And just now, scientists are starting to catch up to spiritual truths. Like they're starting to get closer and closer to where they can both prove each other. That those who can see beyond the veil, it turns out that this physical reality, he says, you think that those who would know the truth, even if it's something as basic, if it's not as mystical as, seeing beyond the veil, knowing to eat the right foods, doing everything you can to stay healthy, blah, blah, blah. Those who actually start discovering truth, whatever that truth may be. So in his experiments, even if you don't like spirituality or whatever, he created many, 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 many worlds. Truth would be like knowing how much oxygen, like really simple beings who could survive on little oxygen, beings who could, whatever. You have to listen to his video. But anyway, truth, he came up with many, many different experiments of what is truth and what is not truth. Mathematically, simple. From like he created a world, there's two different kind of beings. One knew how much oxygen there was in order to survive and live, and one didn't. Okay? That was just one example. Truth in our world could be seeing beyond the veil, right? A little bit more mystical. In every single experiment he did, the ones who, what did he call those? What did he call those? He called them physical benefits, something like that. Those who competed for physical benefits and resources and who didn't know the truth ended up destroying those who were more cooperative and saw the truth. That maybe, if you look at nature, nature's cooperative. It's not competitive, right? Little things like that. The ones who are physical, who didn't know truth, ended up destroying those who did know truth in all of his experiments. And I found that so fascinating. Whether you think about that in the physical world, why we might have wars, those who know that peace is probably more truth in the way to live. That's why those who, want to be more physical and have land and resources end up destroying those who want peace and want to share. In my own case, I've often asked that question. Why, when I sit down every morning, and I have for like 8 years or whatever, and I believe that I was born to research and find truth. Like, that is my passion, that is my obsession. And yet, with each time I find and discover truth and happiness, cancer recurs. And then what I find even more fascinating is it's kind of like you discover some truth, you discover happiness, you discover the way that you should be or whatever, and then it's like the physical world on one hand wants to destroy your knowledge of truth, but on the other hand wants to keep you in the physical world. So that's kind of like the juxtaposition to me. So on one hand, you start discovering truth, you start discovering more happiness, you start discovering more health, whatever, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and all of a sudden something else comes up, right? And I've heard things like, well, that's just the way it's got to be. You got to have negative and positive. And in our world, that's kind of true. From pain comes lessons. You can't move without negative energy and positive energy working together. But sometimes I ask the world, is that the way it has to be? Because I also believe there are other dimensions. There are other worlds in which this can't be the case in every single world. Why do we have to suffer, experience pain and loss and all this other stuff? There's got to be a better place and way, which is what a lot of the religions and religious texts and everything talk about, right? And I come across thoughts and ideas that you can create heaven and hell right here on earth. And I still believe a lot of that. Heaven and hell are just states of mind, states of being. But then why, when I find more heavenly states, does more pain seem to come? And Vlad, I can't remember his name, hopefully I'll find it and put a link below again as well, if I remember, tells us that there's like this law of equilibrium, where it's like everything has to be balanced. So if you experience more joy, if you experience more health, something else has to come along to balance it out. And what I've really been thinking about and experiencing and meditating upon, and I posted this a while back, is density devours. So what's kind of interesting, this is something I picked up on and just kind of knew instinctively, and yet here I am, however many weeks later, listening to a professor actually who did a lot of studies basically prove that the physical world devours. It competes. And so at the same time, it almost seems to want to imprison rather than set free. So on one hand, cancer recurs, but then every time there's hope for new treatment, right? And I swear this ego, that's what I'm going to call it, energy, this physical world is smart. It will come at you like if you've made up your mind, like I made up my mind, no chemo. I made up my mind like, what if quality life is better than quantity of life? Then it will come at you with a better treatment that doesn't involve chemo, but still will keep you here. And then it surrounds you with people in their fear. I just find that quite fascinating. And I've also been thinking, this is why I might not actually publish it, because the people who love me and care about me might get worried, but let me reassure you, I do plan on being around for a while. But I'm totally getting and understanding this quote in the Bible when Jesus is talking to his followers about how long do I have to stay here for you people? How long do I have to sit here and teach you about reality, the real reality, before you can start taking it on, believing and learning it for yourself? That this is actually the place of imprisonment. And I do believe that that's probably why religious organizations and whoever talk about when you die, and that used to piss me off too. You have to get busy living now, not when you die. And I still believe that too. Anyway, I don't really have So, okay, here's what I was also thinking. I sat this morning in my chair for 2 hours, and I'll still probably do this too, because this is how we share hope. This is how we share truth. This is how we share knowledge. And what's really interesting is I used to wonder that as well. I become pretty smart. I can kind of see beyond. I've learned so much that I can pass on to others. You know, why haven't I? And yet, who goes viral on TikTok and YouTube? Excuse my language, but dumbass people doing things that really don't matter. Okay, sorry if I'm being a little judgmental there. But now it makes sense. The physical world wants to hide the truth. And so I'll never be, famous, which I don't care. The universe has been telling me for many, many years, your role is not to lead from the light, but to lead from behind, which is another book I would like to write. Leading from behind. So, I don't have any big glorious point today. To be honest, it's just me sharing my thoughts of fascination about this talk. It does, however, answer for me, why do bad things happen to good people? Because we live in this very narrow field of physical reality. And physical reality consumes. We can't exist unless we kill or consume something else. Unless we kill or consume, like even if you want to go to the basics, a tree has to consume the rocks, right? The soil. Then we consume the plants. And we might even and the animals consume the plants. And then a bunch of us will consume the animals. And then disease, and eventually the earth, the cycle of life, consumes us. Right? So we can't exist unless we're taking from, killing, consuming something else. And I've also thought about this for a long time. On one hand, it's really nice to consume, at least with our physical senses, right? And I have seen there is a benefit in physical reality. I am not dissing it. I do think, every morning I actually say a prayer or a statement. And part of that prayer, part of that statement is, how will we know where we are if we can't see where we are? How will we know how we are doing if we can't physically see it, sense it, and touch it? So I do think there is purpose in physical reality. And I think he even touches on it on his talk, that the purpose is to teach us, to give us valuable lessons, But, and this I think is truth, there is so much more. And that's what everything leads to, right? There is so much more than this physical reality. This physical reality is just a very small fraction of the truth. And part of me wonders, when you start to realize and understand the whole truth about and behind physical reality, to me, it's almost like you finished the game. Feel like you got it. You got the ultimate lesson that you were supposed to get down here. And while we're down here, it's like going on different levels. I've explained it as like a video game or going on an elevator. Floor 1, we're here to learn about the value of fear, but how to turn fear into courage. We're here to learn about the value of guilt, but how to turn guilt into acceptance. We're here to learn about the value of low self-worth and insecurity so that we can transform it into high self-confidence. We're here to learn about the value of anger and jealousy so that we can transform it into love and compassion and acceptance. We're here to learn about the value of lies so that we can transform it into truth. We're here to learn about the value of misperception so that we can change it into clear perception. We're here to learn, as you break through the crown chakra, as you cross the rainbow bridge, as you go up on Jacob's ladder, that we are just a small fraction of the whole. We're just a drop in the pond of the ocean. So we're individual, just a very small piece of us. If you think of it like that, think of yourself as one drop of an entire ocean. But when you are connected to the ocean, think of how vast and powerful you are. And that's the part that is hidden from us. That we do create our own reality, and that we create it based on perception, based on seeing it. We speak it with our words, and it comes to life, but we're doing it together as a collective. But when we do it, our thoughts, our words become their own living thing. So to me, physical reality became its own living thing, has its own consciousness, and everything within physical reality has its own consciousness. You know, one of the things that I learned about is plants are very, very powerfully conscious. One of them got itself legalized. Don't tell me that plants aren't freaking smart. This one got itself legalized, and now it generates billions of dollars. It's a very powerful consciousness for the economies that legalized it. Even green plants, because when you ingest them in your body, then you take in that consciousness. And now it can be physical. It's very powerful. I think even greens, green smoothies, green drinks, kale became very popular for a while. Very powerful consciousnesses. That isn't just like, you know, one person having an influence over a community around it. That's impacting like the whole United States, right? That's powerful. So, I'm trying to wrap this up. To be honest, I knew it was just going to be a kind of verbal vomit. I guess the whole thing kind of sums down to, why do bad things happen to good people? And often good people are the ones who see truth, are the ones who aren't afraid, have transformed their guilt to acceptance, their low insecurity to security, their jealousy into compassion, their anger into love, the lies into truth, misperception into clear perception, and they've kind of like reached their God consciousness. They kind of reached the end of the game. And so then at that point, game over. With that said, we have the choice of free will. And at the same time, this physical world, even though on some hand it doesn't want you to learn about reality, and it will try to hide it from you and destroy you and make you sick, at the same time it wants to keep you here. And that's the juxtaposition, I guess. I'm not sure if this really helped anyone today. Maybe it answered the question why bad things happen to good people. But I hope the purpose of this talk, number one, if I'm being honest, my own ego and selfishness needs to verbally vomit this wisdom out loud. Because again, I think the worst thing we could do is die with the music or wisdom still inside of us and not pass it on. But number two, I share this in hopes that it will open somebody's mind. Maybe, and what I found with truth is even though it doesn't necessarily make things easier per se, it at least gives you a reason. And the reason, even though it might suck or not be fair, in some small way, sometimes, maybe not for everyone, but at least for me, gives me peace of mind. Like, oh, okay, that's why. At least I have an answer. And if I have an answer, then I have a little bit more peace. I'm not so agitated. So that's my hope, to kind of open up people's mind and possibly give them at least one explanation for why bad things happen to good people. I hope that, which is funny because sometimes it almost made me pause. Like, do I really want to share my other wisdom today that I had planned to share? If I teach people truth, I don't want bad things to happen to them. But that's their free will. And I know that only the people who are ready for it and want it will find it. So that gives me peace. And I hope that your day is filled with many peace and blessings.